So the beauty of it is that this relationship, because of this quality, will result in infinite growth. If you don't do that, it'll be finite growth. So what we see when we're talking to groups of people is we see there's a lot of people who are concerned about the sins of the world and their own sins too, but because they don't involve God in them yet, they do try to work through some of their sins and work through and progress with regard to some of their sins. But the net result is there's going to be a finite level to which you can do that, beyond which you're not going to be able to progress. You need to receive God's love in order to progress beyond those points. Now, of course, it's not going to be need, is it? Because it's going to have to be a desire, not a need. Not it's like desperate need, it's a desire to do it, a passion for it. So what I'm trying to do today is encourage you to have a passion for God rather than just have some feelings for God occasionally. Yeah? A passion for God constantly is going to result in the best possible outcomes. Yeah? And that's what we're trying to encourage. So, France?
And I think the difference with it is then it's fun to go loving steps as well. It's like learning to walk.
Yep.
For a child. It's great. Even you may fall down a couple of times. And
Which
then it's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I can do this more loving and that.
Yeah, so the key is firstly to determine the truth though, because, we need to first know what is loving. So sometimes when we're coming from a damaged environment, a damaged social environment, a damaged childhood environment, and so forth, we think things are loving that are not, so an example of that is the average mother on earth thinks that doing everything for her child is the most loving thing. That's an example of that, right? That is not true, because God doesn't do everything for you. He expects you to learn how to do things for yourself, right? So actually a loving mother or father would educate the child how to do things for themselves. That's what a loving parent would do. So the person who's damaged would go emotionally in some way or other, would go, oh, but I've got to, my child wants to go to sport, and my child wants to go here, and I've got to run them all around and run them all, sacrifice myself while I'm doing it. I've got to do everything for them. And, they didn't have what I don't want them to have my life that I had. My life was too hard, too difficult. So I want them to have a smooth life where they don't have to make any decisions and any worries about anything. And while we're doing that, we're educating them to not make their own decisions, not make their own choices, not determine what is loving and what isn't. And so basically we're turning them into dumb adults, is what we're doing, who can't even look after themselves and who are like 30 getting married and still thinking his wife's got to cook every meal for him as an act of love, right? So you can see that while I bring up my child that way, I've got problems, and those problems I would know about if I had my relationship with God. I would go, oh, look what I'm doing. See, when I was sort of in my younger years, if you want to call them that, my two sons, I've got two sons, and one of those, both of those sons, I thought, I never had anybody buy a car for me. I had to work and work and work before I bought my first car, and it was a dumpy old cruddy thing that broke down half the time, and I had to fix it every time as well, and I am not understanding that I had to learn how to do mechanics. I had to learn, a lot of good things from all of this. So I thought, I'll buy when I have the money, eventually if I work hard enough and everything, and I do developments and I, work really hard, I'll eventually get enough money to buy my son's car each, right? Not a new car, but pretty new car, 2 years old. Now, up until I was about 35, I never had a new car myself, and there I was buying them for my boys who were 18. was I teaching them? See, I didn't consider what I was teaching them. I just thought, I was just feeling about myself and going, I don't want them to have to do what I did, so I'm going to make it easier for them. Not thinking that I was actually educating them, teaching them. And what was I teaching? I was teaching them to be dependent. And now when I look at it, there are still some effects. My oldest son now is 40 and my youngest son's 38. And there's still some effects they're living with based on what I taught them. And if I hadn't taught them that, they would be more self-sufficient individuals. So I look at it and I go, wow, like my sin, which was only to avoid my own feelings in the end, that's the only reason why I did it, has now made them more dependent, more unable to create. And I think, and now that I think about it, both of them have never, ever had the funds to, or the knowledge to fix a car. Both of them now don't have the knowledge to fix a car. And both of them also now have never, I don't think, ever bought a new one either, or even a fairly new second-hand one. Which by the time you're 40, you would think you probably would have had to do at some point, right? None of them had to do that. Now, I'm not saying you need a car to live, but what I'm saying is I taught them things that caused them to be dependent, and it's been damaging for their life. And if I was connected more to God at the time, I wouldn't have done it. Because I would have seen or foresaw the future results of my decision. And this is the beautiful thing about truth, is that you not only see in the moment what love would dictate, but you also see what it's going to lead to in the longer term future. What I see nowadays is many people bringing up children that are 3 or 4 or 5 years of age, and their future is already determined because of the damage that's been done by the parents. Their future is many of those 4 or 5 years old, when they're 25, it's going to require a very high level of self-awareness for them to change. Yeah. And really, if you think about it, if I've brought up my child in the right way, they should be really quite self-aware by 7 or 8 years of age and be able to change themselves from that point. But for the majority of us, we just do lots of damage there. So since this relationship exposes, so once I saw it, I'm going, I can't do that again. So there's many times afterwards where my sons have wanted me to and have been very angry with me about not doing it, but I've never bought them a car again. Mind you, I don't have the means now to buy them a car because we spend all of our money doing things like this. But if I did, I have the means, I still wouldn't. Right? Because I'd prefer to spend it on sharing truth than I would in helping my own sons avoid personal responsibility. Yeah. And this is where, once you connect with God, and this is, by the way, what God's trying to do with you. He's trying to help you see there's a whole heap of things that you're personally responsible for, and He's not going to ever take responsibility for them. Yeah? He wants you to. And see, a lot of us, when we think about a relationship with God, and historically this has been the case, we want it to somehow magically solve our issues and problems. What solves our issues and problems are understanding the truth and then acting lovingly. God wants you to get that. He wants you to see, when you know the truth, God wants to share it with you through the obturation of the conscience is the main mechanism God does that. He wants to share the truth with you, and then He is letting you make the decision to love. And if you make that decision, you will resolve every single issue you ever face in your future in a happy way. Not what you think is happy at the time, because I'm sure when you give up coffee, right at the beginning, it's not going to be a very happy experience. But it's the same when you give up smoking, it's not a happy experience. But the net result will be you'll be healthier, you'll be wiser, you'll feel more. And so therefore it will result in your future happiness. The problem we have in this world is we're so used to instant gratification, we don't see growth as a process that results in a happy outcome. What we want is the instant gratification, and then we assess that as happy when it's not happiness. How many of us really feel happy? True happiness comes from progressing in these fundamental qualities. That's where happiness comes from.